Hey folks, Bret here. I want to talk to you about a thought that has been preoccupying me over the last several months. It is a concern about where intersectionality is going to lead us. But in order to understand the concern, I have to step back into evolutionary history. There are really two ways in which cooperation evolves. The first one is very ancient. It is based on genetic relatedness, and it's very hard to put a starting point in it, but it literally goes back billions of years. The other kind of cooperation is based on various kinds of reciprocity, and it is much newer and much more fragile. It really gets going in human beings after the invention of farming approximately 10,000 years ago. The problem stems from the fact that when reciprocity-based cooperation breaks down, we default to gene-based cooperation. Now look at that in the context of intersectionality, which has captured the attention of the far left. Intersectionality effectively argues that people have different kinds of oppression that they have historically suffered from based on the categories that they inhabit. So your race, your gender, your sex all carry degrees of oppression that come from history. And the intersectionalists would like to transfer well-being from those who have historically been privileged to those who have historically been oppressed based essentially on an accounting scheme. How many different kinds of oppression have you faced, and what are the implications of how those different kinds of oppression interact? But the problem is that this way of thinking, which is very frequently a cartoon of reality. It does not depict the way oppression actually functions in the present. It lacks nuance. But beyond that, in order to function, it has to define an enemy. The enemy is effectively a fiction. In this case, it is something called whiteness. And the way the enemy is drawn, whiteness is an inherent characteristic, something that can be read on the skin. And what that means is there's no escaping it. So for people who suffer from whiteness, you are simply going to be on the losing end of the intersectional juggernaut, no matter what you do. If you think about how that is likely to unfold, people who are the object of ire from the intersectionalists are going to be backed against the wall together. Who are they going to be? Well, primarily they're going to be straight and white and very frequently male. What happens, though, if you back straight white males against the wall together? Well, think about what goes on the intersectional side. As the intersectionalists take power, the coalition that they have assembled is likely to break down. In other words, those who are on the intersectional side but are not at the top of it have a lot to lose in the reordering of things that would come from a win by the intersectionalists. So cooperation, game theoretically, is very likely to break down amongst the intersectionalists. At the same time, the people who they have backed against the wall together have a second basis for cooperation, and it is much more durable. It is genetic cooperation. So the concern that I have is that the intersectionalists may end up creating the very enemy they claim they are fighting. They're going to back straight white males against the wall and speak of the devil. White nationalism will emerge from that cohort. And when it does, those people will feel empowered and they will feel self-righteous because they have been accused of things that are, frankly, a form of bigotry. They have been accused by bigots of oppressing others, and they have been told that they are not entitled to well-being, no matter how they individually have behaved. And so what do they have to lose by cooperating together against the intersectionalists and essentially creating the world that the intersectionalists claim already exists? Now, what we should do about this is not entirely clear, but one thing that must happen is we must level up our thinking, and we must understand that backing people against the wall who have a genetic basis for cooperation is very dangerous, because history tells us that movements created by such people can be very destructive, and that ultimately they may turn into a genocidal menace. So what is the outgrowth of all of this preoccupation that I've had on this topic? I think the answer is fairly clear. The answer is that we must recognize that the very best things that human beings are capable of are based on this more elevated type of cooperation. We have to resist the urge to fall into this negative kind of tribalism that is driven on both sides by the intersectional movement. And we must foster the kind of cooperation that has spread over the course of recent history, where people increasingly ignore genetic relatedness and they find other reasons to get along and to prosper together. Hey folks, if you like this video, click like, subscribe to the channel, and if you feel like supporting the creation of more content like this, head on over to my Patreon page and sign up at whatever level feels comfortable.